Hey everybody, we're here with Impeller Studios, and we're going to talk about their Kickstarter for Starfighter Inc. Hey guys, what's going on?
How you doing?
Hey,
Good.
thanks for having us.
Why don't you introduce yourself so our guys can know who you are?
Okay, I'm David Wessman. I'm the lead designer on the project. I have a long background in space combat. Got my start at LucasArts as a tester, but when I realized that the guy making the flight combat games was an independent contractor, I said, oh, well, I want to work for him. So I started working for Larry Holland and ended up on the X-Wing project and did that whole series. Had a great blast doing that, and then my career shifted. It went more into the console direction, did Bloodwake, boat combat game, Chronicles of Riddick, The Escape from Butcher Bay, Saints Row, the first one, and the last commercial title I shipped was Death Junior 2, Root of Evil, which was a complete departure from everything in the past and was a total blast.
Well, that's kind of fun sometimes we do those things that kind of take you in different directions to just kind of experience different things. So,
well, the contrast with what we're doing now is where here we're trying to be very realistic. That game, not in the slightest.
That's okay. There's room for everybody. So, Coray, what about you? Tell us about yourself.
So I'm the executive producer and writer on Starfighter Inc. I got my start doing Air Force simulations, writing and designing those. Had an interesting couple of years in the industry working on some AAA shooters, Homefront and Frontline's Fuel of War. I did writing and production, a little bit of game design for those. Worked on a lot of totally weird and random stuff, and then hooked up with these guys about almost 2 years ago. And I've been helping them put together the game, put together the Kickstarter, and having a whole lot of fun doing it.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you guys come together? How did you create the idea? What made you decide to make Starfighter Inc.? What was the impetus behind doing this?
Go ahead,
You want
David.
to take that? Well, you...
Oh, well, my story is shorter and probably funnier, but it's sort of dependent on Dave's. So one of the guys I worked with at Chaos approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in working on a game with David Wessman? He was the lead designer of X-Wing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And he's like, do you want to know what it is? No, I don't care. I love X-Wing. So that was my start in the project. I came on probably after the project had been in development for a couple months.
There was a core group actually before me, and they just had the dream of doing, bringing the return to the traditional cockpit-based shooter experience, influenced heavily by X-Wing series, and just met these guys at GDC 2013 and talking about it, revealing my background, and oh my God, this would be the perfect project for you. Would be interested? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'd be interested. I've been wanting to go back to this forever. This is awesome.
Describe what is Starfighter Inc. I mean, it sounds like it's a realistic space shooter, but take me through like a day in the life of playing the game.
Okay, it's primarily going to be mission based. You serve for a mercenary corporation, a private military corporation, and you get hired to do various things. And sometimes it's more or less white hat. It's protecting a cargo, convoy. Other times it's more nefarious. It's like we need somebody to carry out a black bag type of job, and we want plausible deniability. Right. So we're going to hire your guys. So that'll be a part of the game too, is the kind of reputation that you build. The combat itself we envision as being really varied according to what kinds of ships are involved, what their positions are, what kind of weapons they're using. We want to go really into detail on the specifics of the damage system. It's got a very detailed damage model, accounting for the types of weapons, the types of materials that are being hit, the velocities involved. And in the outcome of the mission is determined how valuable you are to the company, or maybe how costly you are to the company. You just lost a very expensive ship.
Right. So let's dig a little in the story here. So whereabouts is it? Is it near Earth space? Where are we in the story?
Entirely in the solar system.
Okay.
We're imagining a pretty well-developed, at least on the industrial side. Colonization is also occurring throughout the solar system. But the main thing is there's a fully developed economic infrastructure, hence a reason to fight.
Right, always. You know, when you're making a space game, and I have a little history in that as well. I mean, in fact, we were probably competitors back in the day. But like, there's always the Star Trek, which is the clean, glistening blue, and then there's the Firefly, right, which is the dirty, grungy. So where are you guys on that scale? Where are you?
Much more on the Firefly side.
Right, right. Good.
Yeah, it's sort of a dystopian view of the future. That usually makes a good setting for games.
Sure.
But yeah, at the same time, we are paying attention to a lot of the research on what would you be mining if you were out in the Saturnian system, and helium-3. Okay, great. Yeah. So we'll set up, the processing for that. What kind of manufacturing happens in zero gravity? And where are they getting the materials? How is it getting put into orbit? What's the cheapest way to do that? We don't attach a rocket to everything. We can use sails. We can, there's all kinds of really cool stuff that is on the drawing board. And so we're going to take it off the drawing board and put it in the game.
Oh, that's really cool.
I think one of the cool things about the story is it's, from the player perspective. So Dave touched really nicely on the sort of broader lore and backstory. But the player story is not really one of good versus evil or sort of big sort of fantasy notions like that. It's much more about your path through this world. The person next to you you're fighting for, the corporation that you have an allegiance to, your reputation, and so it's a much more realistic story that we think pairs really nicely with our pretty realistic setting.
So now, is it single player? Is it multiplayer? Is it PvE, PvP? What's primarily is the?
It is primarily multiplayer PvP.
Okay.
We have big stretch goals, just to take it from a primarily multiplayer game to a including a single player or cooperative component. But at its core, one of the things that's going to differentiate for us is that we're session-based multiplayer PvP, hardcore focused on that. We're not trying to be everything to everybody because there's a couple of games out there that are trying to do that and doing a pretty cool job of it.
No, there's not.
So we want to own combat. We want to own that. Play for 15 minutes, blow shit up, get back to the server browser, and do it again.
The space game renaissance has certainly been going on, and it's funny. I mean, you guys have been in the industry long enough to know that. I mean, I've seen it to where, if you recall, RPGs were dead at one point. They said there's no such, and then now they're crazy. And then, do you remember? No first-person shooter will ever work on the console. It's just amazing to watch the people. So my question here is does Kickstarter allow us to break those barriers that are sort of put in place by obstacles put in place by people who just sort of do that as to what they really think is happening?
I think, to be fair to the publishers, particularly the ones that are large publicly traded companies, they have to avoid risk.
Yep.
That's the bottom line. They have to avoid risk. And so when the inexplicable decline in the market for simulators happened at the end of the 90s, very hard to make the case, you should invest 15, 20, 30 million in a state-of-the-art AAA space combat game. Sure.
Well, yeah.
And so, Kickstarter, crowdfunding, digital distribution, all those factors together, I think, is what is enabling this. Because, like you said, it's like we can appeal directly to fans. And if there's enough of them, then we can build our game.
Right, pockets of fans. You used to go into CompUSA or wherever and see like PC games all over the place, and now with digital, you sort of, they go, well, it's now console. It's not really. You just have to find those pockets of people, and that. So now you guys have taken to Kickstarter. How many days do you have left on your Kickstarter now?
We have 8 days.
8 days.
I remember as my heart.
Cool. Now, do you have some cool stuff coming up to show people? What's going on? What do you got planned for the last week of this thing?
Well, basically, we're working on everything, right? We're working on gameplay. We're working on some cool assets. Working on some story stuff. We're working on some interviews. And we have a pretty high bar for what we release. A little bit like Valve in that regard. Minus the billions of dollars from Steam. But we never release anything to our fans until we feel it's ready, because it's not fair to our consumers. It's not fair to to our developers to not, get everything to that level of polish. So our hope is that we're going to get everything done. We're going to have an awesome week of just blasting out great content. But our promise to our people is that we're never going to get anything out there before it's ready.
Well, and this is something that we tell our students too when they're putting together their portfolios, they want to get a job. We tell them, don't include anything in your portfolio that you have to explain the deficiencies. So we're taking our own advice there.
Cool. Well, that makes sense. Well, we wish you the luck. I mean, we're Kickstarter supporters. I'm sure you guys are serial backers like the rest of us. So I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. We're looking forward to it. We're going to give you a big shout out as well, and we'll be watching. So thanks a lot.
We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good luck, you
Yeah,
guys.
thanks for having us.